Well, thank you and welcome, California, to the continuation of the April 20th Public Input Design Committee meeting. We will start with roll call. So Director Hernandez.
Yes, thank you. Commissioner Ahmad.
Here.
Commissioner Kutagawa.
Here.
Commissioner Anderson.
Here.
Commissioner Fernandez.
Here.
Commissioner Fornashari.
Here.
Commissioner Sanai.
Here.
And Commissioner Turner.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum, so I call this meeting to order. We are going to begin in our usual fashion with public comment. So Katie, if you could read the instructions, please.
Sure. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted to enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed, it is 954-7908-8817. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you will be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press star 9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. Once it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press star 6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to give your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. And we do not have anyone in the queue at this time.
Okay, well, we'll wait for the live stream to catch up and then give listeners a little bit of time to call in.
And the instructions are complete on the stream, and we do not have anyone in the queue.
Okay. Well, we will have another opportunity for public comment at the end of the meeting today. So we will move forward with the agenda. I'd like to thank the line drawers for joining us again. So let's see. Commissioner or Patricia and I put together a document that kind of summarizes what the goals, what we know, some what ifs, and then some ideas for bringing to the full commission an approach for our public input meetings. And the hope for today's meeting was that we, as a committee, could get to a point where we would have a proposal to bring to the full commission for the meeting on next week. And so with that in mind, we realized that we didn't get this document put together very much ahead of time. In fact, it was yesterday. And so we want to give everyone a few minutes to take a look at that document and read it. It's, I forget what we titled it. Sorry, trying to find it.
Is it the brain writing one?
No. So the brain writing Miro visual was a picture of the brain writing. And the brain writing exercise is a transcript of that exercise because you can't read the picture. And so I took all that input and put it into columns and then I formatted it in a way that I kind of categorized the input in a way to help us. But the document is called Koi Blitz and Community Conversations that we'd like you all to, yes, thank you, that we'd like you all to just take a few minutes and read, and then just kind of look up and wave your hand when you're done, and so we'll know when everyone's done. Did I miss anything, Patricia?
No, that's perfect.
What was the document called?
It's called Koi Blitz and Community Conversations. It's under
Koi Blitz?
COI space BLITZ.
Oh, Blitz.
Yeah, it's in the handout. It's under the handouts for this meeting.
As you finish reading it, just if you can wave your hand or something, because some people are reading it on screen and some people are reading it on paper. How many people need a little bit more time? I was talking to myself. Anyone else need more time?
Let's see, we have one caller in the queue, so why don't we go ahead and take that call? And if folks need to finish up, we can get back to this after the call.
Sure thing, Chair. Just a moment. Go ahead, caller.
Thank you for this opportunity. I listened to your panel and group exercise last week and found it very informative. However, while I'm not sure it was meant that way, someone said at the start of the exercise, don't worry about Bagley King. That is the wrong message about any public meeting in California. No one should try to minimize or get around Bagley King. It is not an inconvenience or something meant to bother. It is the foundation of one of the twin pillars that should underpin your public input efforts. Clearly, you have embraced the first pillar, that you want to hear from as many and as diverse a collection of voices as possible, and that is a very good thing. But it should not come at the expense of the second pillar, which is that the input process has to be open and transparent so everyone knows which voices are being heard. Transparency is just as critical as diversity. The preamble of Proposition 11 states, quote, every aspect of this process will be open to scrutiny by the public and the press, end quote. Bagley King is the foundation of government transparency in California. So please do not design a process to include and engage as many people as possible and then later try to figure out how to make it transparent. Design the process from the start by focusing on how to be transparent while engaging as many people as possible. Thank you.
Hi, thank you so much for your call. And we definitely believe in transparency and building on Bagley King, as well as all the requirements within the our statute. When we said I believe you're referring to the moment that we started our brainstorming. And we said, as we're thinking through ideas, we were trying to keep everyone to think as broadly and as big as possible. And it was just brainstorming. And one of the things we said was, don't worry about the legal requirements. And I may have mentioned Bagley King, as well as budget and other things that constrict us sometimes when brainstorming. And we ended by saying we will apply all of that and as when we're starting to actually design the process. So it was just in the light of brainstorming, we wanted to make sure that everybody was being as open and as creative as possible. But now as we're building everything, all those constraints are into play. So thank you again for reminding us of how important it is to follow all the laws, but as well, more importantly, to go above and beyond and really be transparent and engaging.
Thank you, Patricia. Yeah, well said. Thank you. Thank you so much. We are definitely committed to complying with Bagley King and being fully transparent through this process. And as Patricia said, as now we're in the design phase of this process, and we are definitely designing to be absolutely compliant with Bagley King in all of our statutes, just to reiterate what Patricia said. Okay, do you want to take over the facilitation at this point, Patricia?
Sure. Thank you, Neil. First, I want to acknowledge a couple of things. I do want to acknowledge that today is kind of an emotional day for a lot of people, and we're with you and we understand. I also want to acknowledge the great work that Trina, Neil, and Linda did today in their presentation. Thank you very much for that was our first 3-person presentation, public presentation, and all of the above. So thank you so much. We look forward to Monday's presentation in Spanish. Alicia will be doing that one with Pedro Toledo and Commissioner Kennedy. So if you haven't signed up for RSVP, please do. And finally, moving on to our work for today, I wanted to say we did receive a lot of positive feedback from the public about the process and how we did it. We also want to acknowledge that though the process was, the Miro tool is really good for engaging everybody and we were able to show what people were doing, it is not as good for downloading and having it as a document for the public to view later. So we apologize for those who are trying to look at the very, very small print. Even if you have it on your screen and you try to enlarge it, it just goes blurry. But Neil did take some painstakingly time to download it and put it in a nice format. And so you can read everything we did in the second document that's there. We wanted to have the original document there so people could see that it was there, but then we created a second document so you could actually read it. So thank you, Neil, for doing that. And thank you, everybody who participated in that process. We do encourage all the subcommittee members and staff to read through the document. Every single committee there's a great idea for all of us in here. And maybe at the next meeting, we can start seeing how do we did pull some of this into the other document, the Koi Blitz and community conversations document. But I was there for the process, but reading it over again several times now, I get something new each time. So I definitely think that's a good document for all of us to keep visiting as we're designing. I think I covered everything we're supposed to do there. Going to the document that we created for today, I wanted just to remind us how we got here. Whoops, yes, Isra.
Sorry to interrupt, Commissioner Sinai. You mentioned that we received a lot of public feedback on this. I don't know if I'm missing something, but I haven't seen any public comments come through about the process.
People have just in conversation and stuff, people have brought it up. It was commented on Twitter. And so that's how, and then the gentleman who just called. So it's been more informal versus formal.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify that I wasn't missing something that I should have reviewed ahead of this meeting. Thank you.
So just to remind us how we got here, we've had 3 meetings kind of moving up to here. First of all, we created this committee because we kept finding that we needed information from each other. And so, we were at a critical point for the next design, kind of the next phase of the work we were doing, with public education being the first phase and going into community mapping or collection of kois. And so we put together a committee. The first meeting we kind of met to say, well, why does input matter, to make sure we were all on the same page and we were, and also how we wanted to work together. The second meeting, we discussed the parameters, be it the legal, budgetary, and contract, the parameters. And we still owe you all the document that puts all that together, so we have one quick cheat sheet for all of us. And the last meeting we did was brainstorming on how best to use all of the commission's assets for this next phase of public input. When we were mapping out the dates, it looked like we had, it was a good pace. Honestly, Neil and I will tell you that it's been a very quick pace. And we keep trying to be like, okay, we got to create the new document. Wait, we got to look back at what we did last time. And we've consistently been looking back, but we haven't necessarily put everything in nice format for everybody else. Because of Bagley-Keene, we can only collaborate when it's 2 commissioners. We can bring, we need to be careful on how many how many people we talk to, so we don't do serial meetings. And so in between meetings, it does get difficult, and this is more for the public, on how we can have conversations about some of these topics. We can talk to staff, I can speak to Isra and then bring, and then say, okay, Neil, I got this piece. But after, we have to be careful that Neil then doesn't talk to Alicia, who talks to Trina. And so we've been really trying to be very careful around the Bagley King. And so those are just some of the overviews. Is there anything on how we got here that anybody would like to add to? Great. Well, thank you, everybody, for all the great work up to now. So when we created the document, we put in the goals that were in the original outreach document. Just to kind of summarize it, what we really want to do is we want to receive significant number of community input, community map, to ensuring that they reflect the diversity of the California region. And so that's kind of our overall goal of what we've been keeping in mind. We have, we do have numbers and things like that in goal 1, 2, and 3. And I don't want to go back to those right now. We can visit those again, but they were the ones that we said, let's use those to be our guideposts as we were moving forward. We've agreed that there's 3 phases: education, public education. Phase 2 was community mapping or submission of Kois, and district line drawing. There's a 4th, which is the community group presentations, and we will continue to discuss, how do we want to receive the input from the community groups as they're doing their work. So how we set up the document was kind of, what do we know, like all the different factors that are kind of playing in, what are some of the pain points and some of the opportunity points, what is our reality right now? And then we kind of took the what if, kind of opened up our minds to what if we did things, okay, based on all of this, what if we do things differently, and what can we do differently? And again, we read everything that's been sent to us, as well as the exercises that we all did. And then we came up with our proposed plan for us to discuss. And again, that is really our straw house. I don't know why straw man is a word. Is a saying, but it just sounded better to me to say straw house. And so if we can start with what we know. Any thoughts on what we know regarding the census delays and the COVID restrictions? Anything we missed or anything we would want to add to that? Go ahead, Isra.
Sorry, I need to take a step back. Can you all help me understand what is the goal of this particular meeting? Like, what are we hoping to achieve by the end of our time here today? So I can structure and tailor my feedback and input based off of that.
So as Neil had said in the beginning, we, if possible, because we know that there's a lot we still need to do, but at the very beginning, we were kind of asked, hey, do you think you can bring something to the full commission by the meeting on April 26th? We said we think so, we'll see, but we're totally know that it could be rushed. And so the idea would be to submit, to think through what would the next phase be? Would it be hearings? Would it not be hearings? Can it be, what can it look like different? And what would the timeline be? Because staff and others have been asking, hey, we really need to start planning some of these pieces. And so it's starting to give some of those parameters so that from there, staff can create their work plans, the other committees can continue to create their work plans and whatnot.
Okay, I think I'm getting confused then with the outreach plan that we have already developed and the draft version that exists and the timeline that's embedded in there and what we're discussing here. And are those timelines different, or do they need to converge at some point?
They will converge at some point. Right now, we're really talking about the timeline here. Honestly, what was asked of us was to say, when would we have meetings, but we really felt that that was staff could do that part. If we say, hey, through May, this is the time we would like to have these certain types of meetings, then staff could put in the meat on the bones that on that. But the timeline, we have updated the outreach plan, but we have not designed this phase of the outreach, especially considering everything that came into play. That's changed.
Okay, I'll step back and allow someone
And
else
if
to
it's
speak.
easier, instead of timeline, if the word schedule is easier, but we're really trying to get to a schedule so that we can
So
start
like
scheduling
specific
things.
dates. So specific dates, like should we have our calendars open so we can?
No,
know which
we
dates?
aren't going to set the specific dates. We want staff to work on the specific dates. We really feel that
Okay.
that's best left to staff to work on the specific dates.
I would actually disagree in the sense that it should probably be a discussion with the full group. And my understanding was that we would bring a schedule forward to the full commission for consideration with specific dates and timeframes for community input meetings. And I'm going off of the outreach draft plan that we had worked on and developed with the team, which stated that we would start these input meetings starting in June, I believe.
Right. And so now we're trying to say things have changed. There's a lot of different realities that have happened. I will say a big one was that outreach and engagement was supposed to be done through grant making in the communities, and that's not happening right now. We don't, census, there's delays. So can we be more creative? We've gotten input about how public hearings have worked in the past. We're in this hybrid model. So taking all of that in account. And from the beginning, we've said, hey, let's be creative on how we think about these. So we're just trying to take a step back and say, how can we do this? And maybe scheduling, the exact dates will be something that we all bring in. I don't think the exact dates, I think we would need to bring in the other commissioners if we're going to do it by commission versus letting staff take some time to look at the dates. But I feel like we're jumping ahead versus saying, hey, do we want to look at all these different issues and the possibilities of doing things differently than what it was done last time? Because we have to, no matter what, because of COVID. And will this work? And I really want to emphasize the Koi tool. How do we get more input ahead of time in users? So if we can start from the back start from the beginning and then get to the schedule or the timeline, I think might work better. Alicia or Linda or Alicia, one of you was raising your hand. Linda?
Yeah, I think I'm where Isra is as well too. I am a little concerned. I hear what you're saying, Patricia, but I think now I am starting to feel the crunch of the time, and I'm a little concerned. And as much as I think we haven't been able to do certain things because of, the grants being what it is, and that's a discussion that the grant subcommittee is going to be having this week. So I don't have much else to report at this point, but I think I am concerned about, like, if we are going to get out there, and maybe the first few may not be quite as robust, but I think we need to be conducting these so that we can start telling people this is what's happening. And I feel like once that ball gets rolling, I think then others will just kind of see it as this is real, because right now I think we've taken so long to do everything else to set it up. I think people are just kind of watching and waiting, but I am a little concerned that if we don't just jump in and just start doing something, then we're going to be behind when it comes time to when we need it. I'm also concerned about, I hear what you're saying about hybrid. To me, I think, anything like June and July, we should plan for it to be virtual. And then anything later, we could start planning for perhaps an in-person, for two reasons. One, I think, I'll be honest, there's still a little bit of uncertainty. We don't know where things are going to go. I know people are getting vaccinated, but not everybody is. And also the other consideration is it does take time to plan for travel. And it's not just us and our schedules and our travel, but it's also getting things set up. And I think to say we're going to try to do an in-person in June, I think is a little unrealistic right now and put some undue kind of stress on staff that may not be the best use of their time. I think we should plan for, maybe getting into like, even if it's August, September, and then but by then, I mean, we can make multiple visits to certain areas if we need to via the virtual, and then follow up with the in-person. But I want to encourage that. I also want to encourage that we do look at our calendars and we come with a set of dates to recommend to the full commission rather than going through the exercise of, okay, everybody open your calendars and let's do something. I think if we have a starting place, then it gives us something to react to, or the full commission to react to. So just wanted to add that.
Thank you, Linda. Alvaro?
I'll withdraw my question for now.
Okay. So if we can just make sure we're all on the same page, though, on what are the pain points and what are the opportunities. I think, Linda, a lot of what you said is exactly what we're thinking, except the actual scheduling of time. And Neil and I will be honest about this. It's painful for you to sit through everyone looking through their calendars, and that's just because he and I have the privilege of being more flexible with our times. And so I'm just being honest. Did you want to add something, Neil, since I threw you under the bus with me?
No, you can throw me under the bus whenever you want. Let's see. I just asked you guys, I mean, I hear you, we hear you. Can I just ask you if it's okay if you just kind of follow along with what we're thinking and just go through, because we have an idea for the timeline at the end. Certainly everything is open for discussion and a detailed idea about how we would do this and how we would phase it. And, we thought about COVID and where we're at with COVID and where we expect to be in this. And so, if you can just come along with us for a few more minutes, I think we could kind of clarify some of the questions and concerns that you have.
Thanks, Neil. Anyone else? Alicia, you look like, yeah, I was waiting for that, Alicia.
I mean, I will come along on this ride, but I would also have to agree with Isra and Linda that I even sent an email to both of you that I'm very nervous that we don't have anything scheduled, not only public input, but also business meetings for June and July. And I realize that it can be painful to have everyone look at their calendars, but it's something that's necessary also. We just really need to get something scheduled for June and July, be it in this meeting or this meeting, we can't make a decision, we can only make recommendations. But we really, because there are so many of the commissioners that do have another job and all of us have families, we need to be fair to everyone and staff so that everyone can plan accordingly with their families, summers, vacations, children, whatever the case may be, and also commission work. So I just want to reemphasize that I'm going to wait and, let you lead me for a little bit. But if I don't feel that I want to be led in that direction, I guess that I'll speak up. But thank you so much. I do appreciate the effort and all of the energy that you put towards this. So thanks.
And I want to remind us that public input is not just people calling up at meetings or people presenting at meetings. Public input, we've said from the beginning, is any type of input that the public gives us, be it through the Koi tool, calling us during meetings or not during meetings. We have a phone number they can call, email, through our website. And so public input is broad. And again, we learned on Saturday, we always knew, but we got to see in real time how important having good community maps will be for us. And let me throw out the word good. Getting the input from the community is critical for the work we're doing. So again, I'm gonna just walk us through it. I think I do want to say one thing. Neil and I are not putting a hold on getting public input. I think Neil and I would argue that we're actually looking at how can we get more engaging, how can we engage more people in the process of getting us community input. And this was, again, based on all the work we did. It's not just, Neil and I thinking about this alone. So we know that we have census delays. We know that we have COVID restrictions. We know that the state of California is lifting some of the restrictions on June 15th. We don't know what that means, and we don't know what it means for Bagley King. Yes, Trina.
Thank you. Under what we know, under the COVID restrictions, looking at the bullet that says, we know COVID restrictions, vaccination verification required for large scale, higher risk events. I don't know that to be the case. I'm looking at
I got that.
Did that happen today or yesterday, 2 days ago?
I got that from the state COVID website that, I went, we're going to lift it on the 15th. And what does that mean? So that's what it said on the website.
Effective today or yesterday?
The 15th.
15th? Okay.
So it doesn't mean the passport that people are talking about. They're just.
No, I'm not thinking about the passport. I'm looking at the website, and it says there's no mandatory vaccination requirement from either state or federal government. This is 2 days ago, though. I'll keep checking while we're looking at it.
Okay.
Okay.
And then, right. So then on public input, we've had some of this conversation already. That it's gathering COIs is important for our process, hearing from people throughout the. There's two more phases after, or another phase after this, the line drawing and the maps. And throughout it, there's different ways for the community to engage, and we've gone through that at one of our earlier meetings, and we'll continually go back to designing that. The redistricting access sites, they've actually come up twice today. In a conversation Isra and I had in the community, they said how helpful that was for their efforts in San Diego, but it was more on the city of San Diego, but that they were really, that the statewide databases sites were really helpful in 2011, and then they came up in the calls on the calls today. So they play a role, but is there an opportunity to have more sites or more people who are trained in accessibility? Because 6 is not a lot in a big state. And it's something we've heard from the very, very, very beginning is how important trusted leaders are in this process. Those, and the trusted leaders are those who are in the community, similar to those who joined us last week, but even further grounded in the community, that are working in faith leaders, civic leaders, even those in community clinics, community organizers at the local level. Next, the community groups, we're didn't know if anybody wanted to add anything to public input or the community groups as you were reading it, if there was something that we missed or we misspoke. All right, and we really want to acknowledge that there's a lot of great work happening through the California Redistricting Coalition, as well as at local levels. There's different civic collaboratives that are coming together and are figuring out how they want to be involved with redistricting. And another layer was Neil, Marcy, and I, and others have been on. Yes, Alicia.
No, I just on the hiring, because we're past hiring and contracting, right?
No, well, we're going to go back to that.
Oh, okay, never mind. I'll wait.
Yeah, sorry. We kind of realized afterwards that the order didn't make as much sense. So we'll be back. I should have said that. Thank you. So just on the statewide, we have been doing statewide outreach to those groups who have local chapters and such that can help us. And some of those groups are getting back to us saying, hey, we would like a presentation. We've created letters that have gone out. But a lot of them, not a lot of them, but a few of them have said to us, hey, we would love to have more training so we can use your tools. And so we wanted just to put that out there, that there's people out there wanting more. Then anything to add? Nothing to add there. You all already asked that. So going back to hiring, Alicia, go for it.
Sorry, I thought I had missed my cue. So no, I just wanted to make sure that we remember in the hiring and then our team that we're also recruiting for the outreach director. So I want to make sure we don't lose that position. I didn't see it identified. So that was
I think that's yes. Thank you for reminding us of that. I don't know how Neil and I forgot that one. But one of the things we really wanted to highlight
do we have a time frame for that one?
Yeah, when do we?
Sorry. Yeah, we plan to, we're hopefully going to conduct interviews on this upcoming Monday on the 26th. And then hopefully we'll find a candidate and we'll go forward with that. So hopefully that's 26th in May sometime. We'll have an outreach director. That's our goal.
Great.
Isra, did you want to add to that?
Nope, you got it.
Thank you. And sorry that I don't know how we missed that one. But part of our thinking was there is a lot of resumes coming in and a lot of applications being posted. I mean, we were receiving a lot of different resumes. So just to keep that in mind as an opportunity. And then all of these are kind of estimate dates. Thank you, Alvaro, for helping us with this list of dates and times. But there is a lot of hiring and contractors going on. Our team, we have an excellent team. Patricia, we're very sad. I don't know, did the announcement go out, Alvaro?
The announcement went out to the commissioners.
Okay.
But not beyond that. So I guess we're announcing it now.
Patricia, we're very happy for you and your opportunity, but we're very sad that we're going to lose you. But you're going to do an awesome when you're moving ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner.
So we're hiring 8. Okay, we're hiring a lot more than 8 now because we forgot some folks. And then I wanted to acknowledge, Neil and I really wanted to acknowledge the amazing outreach work that is being done by all the commissioners, by staff, and by the community, that we're really out there. There's a lot going, saying that I don't feel like any of us have been waiting, that we've been really out there, and really when you hear that we have on the books or we've done 100 presentations. And then today's presentation was, I think there was over 140 RSVPs. Freddie, correct me if I'm wrong. And then I've seen the flyer for the Spanish one on Monday in a lot of different places that I didn't think that, thank you everybody for getting it out there and getting people interested. Any thoughts around like our team, our hiring, and our outreach efforts? Anything we missed in that document? Not in the document, in the bullet. And then finally, what else do we have to do this summer? So we need to collect as much, what do we need to do before the census comes? Is we need to look at the racial polarizing voting and start to identify, but we can't really jump, and correct me where I need to be corrected, Jamie and Andrew, around BRA communities, starting to look at the data so that we have that on our radar. And we need to, so those are the 2 main pieces that we need to do. And they're 2 big pieces that we need to do. Andrew, Jamie, anything else that we need to do this summer that I'm missing?
I think that covers it. Yeah, and I think once legal gets on board, then there's going to be some conversations that will be had. to just get a better sense of where potential VRA districts are going to be. So I think, and looking at population changes. So yes, I think you have it covered well.
Thank you. So the next phase, as Neil was saying, we worked on what are our opportunities and what are our pain points. How can we change? Not can we change, but what can we envision? Yes, Jane.
Thank you. Back to our outreach efforts, we said, are there any other things that we haven't? Koi training. We're getting big requests for, the presentation's nice. When are you going to teach us how to use the Koi tool, how to really do the Koi tool? We're hearing that over and over and over again. So that and the emphasis on the Koi tool, to represent all the things that I'm hearing in my presentation, whoever I talk to, that is the number one issue. Well, great. How? I don't quite understand it, that kind of stuff.
Jane, thank you for teeing us up for the what if. So that is exactly true. I think a lot of people want to participate. I think that the input sessions that we've done, the education sessions we've done have been great to get people really, really excited and to understand that they do have a place. I just had the first presentation where people actually got to submit comments afterwards. I hadn't had, usually we have questions, but not the comments. And the comments were all around, I didn't realize how much our voice mattered in this process. So that I was surprised how many of those comments came in that way from the survey. So we've done that, but now what? Now how? So you're absolutely right, Jane. And so that was one of our thoughts was we've got this tool. People still want to understand how, it's not just, you don't just use the tool. Well, yes, you can just use the tool, but the tool is about community and talking to your community or understanding the community needs. And so how do we make sure that there's as many people out there who can be doing what some of the redistricting collaborative members are doing? They're going around and talking to groups, talking to folks about the tool, helping them use their tool or another tool or mapping. But how do we get as many, when we spoke to the California Library Association, they're like, hey, some librarians would be really interested in being trained in this. We heard the same from Boys and Girls Club. We've heard from some of, and when we heard, it's when we have conversations one-on-one, some of the outreach organizers who are saying, hey, this could be something we could be organized in and we could do it. And so we did go to the statewide database and said, hey, what type of training are you doing for those who want to, is there a train the trainer work training? And the statewide database came back and said, no, we will answer questions and such. And it's within the tool, it kind of walks you through it, but that's for an individual. And so originally back when Angela and I first started working on the outreach plan, the idea was that we would be giving grants so groups could do train the trainer at the local level. Well, again, we need to think through how do we, what can we do? So is it possible for us to do a train the trainer workshop? Is it possible for us to consider hiring more than just 8 people outreach workers? We had, I forgot the two names, Marcy, I'm sorry, the 2 levels, but could we hire a team of 2 or a team, could we hire them for all 15 zones? And so they're trained in how to do COIs and they're going out and working with communities and training other people on how to do the COI submission. Yes, Marian.
Until the COVID restrictions are lifted or until you know how they're going to be lifted, you really can't do that because they can't.
Well, when I say go out doesn't necessarily mean go out means virtual meetings, all the ways we're going out now. So I'm not meaning that they're doing the trainings. You can do train the trainers virtually. You can do community organizing meetings virtually. So really, if they're people from the, we hire people from the community. they can talk to a church group and say, hey, let's go through this. We can hire an interpreter, but it would be there would be that, it would be staff versus commissioners, because at one point we had said, oh, should commissioners do it? But this would give that space. So that's where we were thinking of, how do we leverage the hiring we're already doing, the grant dollars that can't be used, can we use them for something that would still serve that purpose that we had, that outreach purpose and that engagement purpose, as well as how do we leverage the use of the Koi? So that was kind of where we were coming from. And so that's where the COI Blitz is. It's a lot of the ideas that came from the brainstorming last time, was how do we make sure that we create a presentation that's more about communities of interest and how do you organize your communities of interest, not so much about us, just moving it more, as Jane was saying, really all our press, all our social media, our get more staff that's going to be down on the ground. And on the ground, I know, Marion, they can't be out and about yet, but they can be making phone calls and setting up a lot of meetings. And the truth is we need more help. And then finally, we want to make sure that during the Koi Blitz, that gives enough time for our database, our data manager, our line drawers, to be able to capture the material, capture what we're getting, translating what needs to be translating, and digitizing what needs to be digitized, and getting it in a more organized fashion. So giving space for that to be done well. As Andrew, you're thinking now.
No, and agree. And then in terms of the database management, I know that there's been a couple meetings on that, and we're meeting just with USDR tomorrow, one-on-one, to go over some of the things that we've talked about, just to make sure that they're up to speed in terms of all the different types of data, and just help them walk through that. So that's that meeting is scheduled for tomorrow.
Great. But it's making sense, the whole digitizing, translating, and managing. Okay. Alicia?
I'm kind of understanding your blitz, but then I'm also, let's see, feeling this something in the pit of my stomach that, as Isra knows me, and so does Linda, I need a deadline. So if we sit here and we wait until the data manager is ready, the database is ready, the line drawer is ready, I don't feel that we should be holding up the public input meeting side of it to wait until everything else is developed. I get it. It'd be ideal if it was already set in place so that we would know where to put this information. But I also feel that the sooner we start, the more input we can obtain. And I thought that was our goal, was to try to obtain as much input as possible. So that's one piece of it. The second piece of it is this whole how to use the Koi tool. Why don't we just do like a quick little video? Because I honestly don't think it's something that I have to go train 20 people, because it's fairly simple to use. Or maybe I'm missing something. Or maybe in one of our future meetings, we just have a quick little demonstration during the meeting. We'll just do the walking through the Koi tool. And then part 3 of that is, Freddie, initially we had wanted to put the Koi link in our redistricting basics presentation, but it wasn't ready in time. So another option is potentially we could add that to our presentation. And when we're out there presenting, we could actually click on it and go into the Koi tool and just do like a mock example of what it takes to submit a Koi. So I'm just trying to think of other ways to try to get that information. And then
sure.
Also that,
and I can answer all those, but I wanted to check with Trina. Trina, did you want to add anything to what Alicia said?
Yeah, I did. In regards to, I think in addition to it being beneficial to talk about how to use the Koi tool, I think what's more important is for people to have examples and let them know how to do analysis on why they want to determine their area is their area. So I think the tool in itself is pretty intuitive. I think people need to understand that if indeed I'm not beyond submitting what my Koi or my community of interest is, I probably need to knock on some doors or get some other folk that I'm in regular relationship with to say, let's all submit it, because here's the difference that it will make for us. In an earlier presentation, for those that had an opportunity to do it, Commissioner Fornashari talked about his area being split up from the previous 2010 cycle. And for things like that, personal testimony that says this has been our experience when things that was important for me, I was not able to get the attention that I thought I needed because I did not have representation that felt the same way about my concerns. So this go round, I want to talk to people, other people that are interested in, this waterway or interested in this park or schools or whatever the case may be. Let's talk about that. And when we explain that to people, I think people will then say, oh, it does matter. So I don't think it's just how to use the tool. I think it's what the tool will do for us in being able to direct how we're thinking about carving up territory and drawing maps.
Right. Thank you, Trina. I think I think you said it, using the Koi tool was kind of a shortcut for that whole process, the whole community organizing, community mapping, and understanding the two new slides we have are really good in the presentation, and there's a lot of questions in there, and it's really helping people walk through them. It's a lot to say when it's only one slide versus if it was a full presentation, but it's asking those critical questions. So it is much more than how do you use a Koi. It's really how do you help communities map their communities of interest, and that includes the narrative part of it. So thank you, Trina. The other piece is I wanted to ask you a question, Alicia. Why are you feeling that we won't be receiving public input if we don't do public input hearing? Or what are we missing by doing a blitz that we would get at a public input hearing?
Well, and if I'm understanding your blitz, you want it to be more of a conversation than a conversation based on what's already been submitted, versus what I want new submittals. Plus, if you want to talk about what you already submitted, that's fine too. But I'm not saying we won't get more, but I feel that even in our presentations, we say, we can't take public input now, that will be forthcoming. So that's not to say that everyone's waiting for the public input, but in my mind, that's what I was gearing up for, was for the public input piece of it. And I feel if we replace those public input with conversations, I think we are decreasing the amount of public input meetings that we can have at other areas, if that makes sense.
Can you say more to that?
In terms of the conversation, so if we've received so many Kois from a certain area, so we're going to talk about that area. So that meeting's dedicated to that, but we already have that input, versus if we went somewhere else to get additional or new input. And maybe it's just the way I'm thinking about it, analyzing it.
Marion, can I respond to that, or were you responding to that?
I had a suggestion, but go ahead.
Go ahead, Marion.
Well, your problem with trying to get commission dates set up is assuming that your public input sessions are going to be with all commissioners present. That's something that I don't think the commission has decided, and maybe that's something you all could talk about and bring up to the commission, whether you want to have public input sessions with the entire commission meeting or with subcommittees, or how you want to schedule them, because it'd be a lot easier to schedule more of them if you're not going to have the full commission involved in every one.
Thank you, Marion. So part of this is where Jamie and Andrew, your experience will be helpful. Obviously, we haven't had we'll receive a lot of community input, and my understanding from talking to some of the community groups, but also I've thought from our training, was that there will be input that's in conflict or overlapping, and that we would need some clarity. That there may be some larger, some of the community input that we receive that's look very similar, but we're not very, we may still have questions. And that if we do a blitz and we do get, we keep saying, what that 0.01% sounds like nothing, but 0.01% of 40 million is 400,000 pieces of information. So from your experience, Jamie and Andrew, will there be a lot of overlapping and conflict COIs?
I can respond to that if that's okay with you, Andrew. I think that in particular in more densely populated areas where districts geographically are smaller due to population constraints, it's easier for COIs to potentially be in conflict, kind of depending on the size of the COI in relation to the size of the district. And additionally, I don't believe that the commission could necessarily identify these two COIs are going to be in conflict until line drawing starts to happen.
So how are you defining conflict?
From a line drawing perspective, I was defining conflict by we're keeping this COI together. That means that this other COI is going to be split for population purposes while we're drawing.
Okay. And so is that different than when people say overlap, COIs that overlap?
I think that the conflicts last time came up a lot with the larger areas that you were considering, like when you were talking about the north, are you going to divide it horizontally or vertically? When you're talking about along the coast, you're going to do coastal versus inland. Are you going to do watershed? It's not your small groups that are going to be in conflict. Those can probably be worked out fairly easily. It's the larger kinds of things that will be in conflict.
And now the other thing that we're sometimes there's, and I don't like to really use the word conflict, it's just differing of opinions is, if you're trying to define your particular neighborhood and you asked, all of your neighbors to go off and go to the COI tool and draw their neighborhood, everybody will have roughly the same, neighborhood, but there will be differing on the borders of like, all right, it ends here on 8th Street. No, it goes down to 6th Street. No, it's traditionally been up to 10th Street. So there's going to be overlaps like that. And I think, as Jamie was saying, as you start to draw, some of this will become very clear. And Marion's right, on some of the smaller groups, it's, hey, good news. Everybody's going to be together. So, regardless of how they define, it looks like all of those COIs will be together. And I think, the other thing this is just beyond the mapping, it's taking in all of the data and all the pieces of information that we're getting from whether it's the COI tool public, the public input meetings or, people mailing it in, going to the website. So making sure you're gathering all of that. And there's going to be some times where it's not entirely clear, where that's a good opportunity, as where people will be weighing in as the commission is talking about, where are the lines going, and people weigh in at that time too. So it's, there's always going to be, nobody's going to be 100% in agreement of everything. So that's where some of the choices come in.
I just wanted, I see Alicia and I see Isra, and I just realized that Neil, you were supposed to take over at this part. So I apologize. I just wanted Oh, to answer your question, Alicia, we will be continuing to take in public input at these sessions. So we're calling them community conversations. They can be called the same public hearings. We just didn't want to use the same wording that was used before, because the idea would be that we would acknowledge to the community that we have received input. This is what we're seeing. Is there more input? And then be able to clarify what everything we have received. Last time, a lot of it. Well, never mind. Isra, and then Alicia, and then Neil. You lead.
Alicia, you were ahead of me. I'll wait until you go.
Okay, I think Andrew put it a lot better, and so did Jamie, than I was trying. I'm like, yeah, that's what I was trying to say. I just didn't use the correct wording. And I think when we say conflict, I don't like that word. I do like differing opinions. And I feel if we have these conversations early on, I feel that somehow it might discourage others from providing input if they think that, oh, okay, they've discovered this conflict or differing of opinions and they're going to go this way with it. I mean, I realize at that point we're not going to make decisions, but I just would prefer, as Jamie mentioned, that these potential differing of opinions, we address later, further into this process, like in September, October, not early on, because early on, I just want to get as much input as we can, and I don't want to discourage anyone from submitting anything. And even if I'm the only one that has this, community of interest that is differing from 100 other people, it's still one that's just as important as another one that somebody else submitted. So that's why I guess I'm having a problem with these conversations happening so soon, so early. So that's just my only comment.
Can I ask her a question? Can I ask a follow-up question first? Thanks. Alicia, you're having, so it's not so much the conversations happening, or it's the conversations around the competing or the overlapping communities of interest versus just leaving the agenda open to receiving more information. Is it also not sharing what we've already received so that people can see them? I mean, part of the idea for us as commissioners also was we don't know when we're going to be able to travel and go see communities. So using these community conversations or these input sessions is a time for us to get a snapshot of that area and that region and look at some of the there's a lot of other data. And if you read the reports from last time, they said that, it would have been good to use other demographic data and waterways and other data that wasn't used. So we can use this this extra time to look at public input and some of those other datas. So I guess my question to you was,
I like the sharing of our data. I would actually like sharing the data, because that would actually maybe trigger me like, oh, we don't have enough for this area. I don't mind the sharing. It's the discussion of differing of opinions early on. I think it's great that everyone can see, because I want to see where we're missing, Kois, and maybe try to try to maybe focus some of our efforts in those areas. But then also, again, if there's another area and I completely disagree with, or my Koi is completely different than what's there, then it will trigger me to submit something. But I do like the idea of sharing what we've received as we move along this process.
Thank you. So I have walked along on this journey and I'm still lost. I think the conversation is interesting. I'm taking mental notes of different things, but in terms of what a public input design meeting, I'm not getting what I need from these conversations. What I'm really looking for is to solidify a timeline, to solidify dates. While we have our line drawers on the call, they can also provide input into what works for their schedules as well. I am looking for us to develop a design that will increase to the extent possible, input from communities, not to look through the different COIs and start having conversations about whether they conflict with each other or whether they overlap. I see that as part of a later portion of our process when we have our experts, our line drawing experts, to be able to actually display those COIs using GIS software in the most accurate way possible. So I know for myself, from what I've seen, that what the Koi tool outputs, I can't eyeball it and look at whether there's conflicts or whether there's overlap. So for the time remaining, I would really like to uplift that we put something down on paper that we can bring to the full commission next week. And I'm hoping it will include timelines as well as what that input design looks like. So if I show up to a public meeting, an input meeting, what is the process? Am I going to learn about the Koi tool then and there? Is there going to be laptops available if this is in person? Are we going to first take a half an hour in the beginning of this meeting to direct everyone who's joining us online to the Koi tool? What are we going to do? When we get to this public input meeting, what are we doing there? That's what I need clarity on, and I'm hoping that I'll get. Thank you.
Neil?
Okay, so I appreciate all the feedback and input at this point. So, I mean, let me just kind of big picture it a little bit for y'all, if I can, and I'll talk timeline when I do that. So we were just kind of looking at, hey, you know, here we are. We were kind of thinking this grant money was going to be out by now. We were using that for education purposes. We were, you know, we had boots on the ground, educating people about redistricting, about what COIs are, what COIs should look like, what value added, what you know, how we're going to use the COIs, and people out there already thinking about that and providing that input. And that just hasn't worked out the way we'd hoped. So we were stepping back to look back. Okay, so we still need to get folks educated on how to use the Koi tool, but you know, along the lines of what Trina said, it's more than just simply using the tool. It's what is meaningful Koi input, and how do I get that and present that to the commission. And so the thought was that we could connect with, that we use some of this grant money to staff up and have that staff connect with the community groups out there, train the community groups to train their folks, and get that rolling as soon as we can, and really begin to get a wave of Koi input through the Koi tool, and really get that activated and get that going. And then a little bit later in the timeline, begin to have, you know, these, we're calling community conversations, all right? But it's basically, you know, a hybrid type of approach where we have 3 locations in a given zone at a time, with, we assume, you know, with full compliance with Bagley Key, whatever that means. If we need a commissioner at each of those sites, then we have a commissioner at each of those sites. We don't. We decide as a commission if we want, or you know, we can decide as a group if we want to recommend that the full commission is involved, or you know, how we do that. But we have these 3 sites available. Probably have a couple staff at each site teaching folks, you know, how to use the Koi tool, how to provide input, but focusing on the Koi tool as the mechanism for input in those meetings. And then we rotate through each of those 3 locations, you know, have it virtual too, right? So all the commissioners can tune in, rotate through each of those with folks presenting input. And those folks, again, there'd be staff there to help them work through it, prompt them, get it, but get their input, have them tell us about their input and what it's all about, and have it put in through the Koi tool, possibly, or with the line drawers. I mean, we need to get some understanding what that would look like, but engaging, and be strategic about picking the 3 locations in each zone. And we thought we would have at least one of these meetings in each zone. We thought 3 in the Bay Area, 3 in LA County. And this, again, it's just a proposal here, right? And so then if we scroll down to the, and so what would that look like, right? So as Patricia said, we'd have somebody from the community come in and begin the meeting by a short briefing. This is this zone. This is the story of this zone. So we can all understand, what the, whatever we need to understand about it, right? What the economics are, what the racial ethnic profile is, what the environment is, what are the, tell us about it, so we get some understanding about the zone. And then we have the opportunity to go around and get public input. We also thought that it would be an opportunity to look at the input that we had to that point from that zone, and have conversations about that if that was something that the folks wanted to do. So you could either come without input and provide input, or you could come and say, this is my input that I've already input, and we can take a look at it and you can tell us about it. So in timeline, we thought in May we could get the curriculums and training created and the schedule done for this Koi Blitz training. It would be May, June kind of time frame. The Koi Blitz would take place June, August. Again, the Koi Blitz is engaging the community groups out there, train the trainer type of approach. And then late June, through early September, we'd be hosting these community conversations. And we thought we could sort of phase this in a way where we did, picked a region or regions to start, do our Koi Blitz, then follow that up with beginning the community conversation, so we could step around the state with a Koi Blitz followed by a community conversation, and work those through the summer into early September, and then in late September, we kind of regroup, look at the input that we've got, and get prepared for line drawing. And then October, December, begin line drawing. So it's kind of a rough idea of what we had in mind. Does that help at all? Or, I mean, is that, it's not as hashed out, as in detail as you wanted, Isra, but that was kind of what we were thinking. And then to further that, we got, as Patricia said, we got a lot of good input on from our last meeting, and ensure that we're incorporating that input into the process. We incorporated some of that input into the ideas that we have here in the process. But again, we want to ensure that we incorporate all those ideas. And a lot of the ideas were, kind of, how did I sort of categorize those? Where did I put that? I've lost it.
Neil, can I ask a clarifying question?
Absolutely.
What is a Koi Blitz?
Oh, okay. So the idea is to engage, train the trainer, get the folks all trained up, and then get them out there in the community to engage the community to provide input using the Koi tool.
Okay, so public input meetings,
No,
essentially.
no.
So
They're
just
not-
training.
No, it's
So-
more than training. It's engaging community groups to training community groups to elicit public input, and then having those groups go out and work with the people in their area to provide public input through the Koi tool.
I see. Okay.
Trina?
So I'm thinking of it when you're saying a train the trainer, or I'm thinking of it as training community partnerships during this time frame to totally blanket the community. So you're calling it a blitz because you're looking at almost something like an all-out assault. Let's just attack as many people, approach as many people as we have, get them trained up on how to use the tool, what using the tool means. And it's a way I'm getting from what you're saying to broaden out our outreach quickly into the community. And you're
Exactly.
using that as blitz. Okay.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not, and it's, so it's community groups, it's libraries, it's Chamber of Commerce, it's Farm Bureau, it's the statewide groups that we've engaged with already, and those that want to partner with us. But the idea kind of sort of germinated from, you know, the part of it from the thought that, you know, we'd hoped to have our grant money out there already and engaging, you know, community groups to be doing this sort of thing with us. And we just, you know, for a number of reasons, haven't been able to do that. So how can we do that? And we were thinking, well, if we had more staff, we had at least one staff member in each zone to engage with those community groups, to train, or those groups, to train the groups to go out and engage their members. Then you know, it's a approach for getting input through the Koi tool. And then the community meetings would be kind of more like our mental model of the public input meetings. So Trina?
Yeah, and so in that, with that thought in mind and just trying to think equitably across this state, have you all, you and Patricia, have you come up with or thought about what would that look like to be successful? So in saying a blitz, engage as many as we can, it can be community members, it can be libraries, et cetera. Do we have an idea of what level or number of community partners, whichever the flavoring of them, how many we would need per zone or per area to then trust that they will go get another X number of people? So I'm just wondering, how do we now control that in a manner beyond saying trusted partners, everybody go out and do this? I'm wondering, is there a set number now that we're saying in each one of the zones we're ideally going to, because we have it on the schedule approximately June through August, but the step before that is we would need to lock in, my terminology would be see contract. I know we're not contracting folk, but we would need to lock in each of the zones are going to reach out. We're going to get 15 different groups and different persuasions to say, yes, we're going to do this. And then they are committing that they're going to reach out to 10. So we know we have 150 folk in each zone. So I'm trying to think of it in that manner, because we're saying blitz. I'm trying to see how do we control it to the extent that we don't have, you know, the blitz up the yazoo in Los Angeles, and then in my area, Central Valley, I really only reached out to 2 people, and now there's 4 little lonely people out trying to reach the whole vast Central Valley. You know, how do we set some parameters around it, even in our desire to do this blitz?
That's a great question, Patricia.
We did come up with it, in the what ifs area, that was kind of where we were doing the imagination. We said, okay, what if we use some of the outreach funding to hire and train 15 outreach workers, at least 1 for each zone? There's 11 zones, so the idea was that some areas may need more. We train these outreach workers to train at least 10 other local leaders on organizing and submitting COIs. So we did the, 10 and it might be higher, and that's why we use at least, but we want at least. We create statewide training in partnerships with organizations that can commit at least 10 local leaders to organize. And the 10 local leaders doesn't mean 10 in all the zones, but that they have some leaders out there as well. So we would, and that would be like the libraries, the chambers, the farm bureaus, the labor unions. We contract with or cover the expense of local leaders to ensure that they reduce all barriers. This one we have to figure out how we do it, but we try to think through of, how do we not only have staff members and partners that are trained in community, that are trained in how to do community mapping or community organizing, but we also help reduce the barriers. Do they get an expense account? What do we do so that they can make sure that people have the translators they need, the Wi-Fi? So that was our first intent of looking at some of that, Trina. But it's not. It probably needs more.
So at this point, we need to take a break. So we'll come back in 15 at 5:15 and continue this conversation. Thanks. Well, welcome back. Welcome back, everyone. Let's see. I want to thank you for your thoughts and feedback at this point in time. Let's see. I want to check in with everyone. Everyone hasn't had a chance to provide input, but I want to provide an opportunity to check in and see if there are what works for you and what questions we still have about what we're talking about at this point. This is just an idea. I mean, we don't know what's happening with the grant making at this point because we can't have these conversations outside of a full-blown meeting. So this is just an idea of a couple approaches to get some training out there and meaningful COI input ahead of time. We're trying to channel our inner Jane Anderson, get the input in as soon as we can, and then have meetings with the public to get input in light of COVID and in light of the schedule that we have. And so, Isra.
Thank you so much. I took the break to revisit the proposal, and I have some thoughts, just ideas for consideration.
Okay.
And I took a good chunk of the pieces in the proposal and squished it in a different way. So from what I'm seeing in terms of questions that we still have, one, we still need to determine who is attending these public input meetings from the commissioner's end. Are we having everyone attend? Are we establishing subcommittees for those and splitting up and dividing and conquering? That is a question that is outstanding for the full commission. The second question I have is, what is the exact role of the line drawers ahead of the census data delivery within community input meetings, with the caveat that we're in virtual setting? So are we asking the line drawers to open up their GIS tool in our virtual meetings, or are we going to direct the public who's attending to the COI tool directly? The third question I have is, and this by no means, none of these questions have to be answered right now, but when are we pausing COI input ahead of line drawing for the first draft of our maps? We talked about this in our bigger meeting of, we can't really draw lines while input is continuously coming in. So we will have to not end, but pause so that we can take a look at that new input that comes in for the next iteration of the maps. The other thing I looked at was the timeline that was listed out, which I think is great. In terms of the different aspects that was in the proposal, I think we do need a demonstration of the Koi tool. But from my perspective, what I'm seeing is we can kind of squish this all into one meeting. So I envision whether it's the whole commission or a partial commission attending these public input meetings. We enter these meetings, we provide a 5 to 10 minute refresher of redistricting, like what is redistricting, why is it important? We demo the Koi tool. We provide examples of Kois that have been submitted, or we can provide examples from last cycle, however we determine that. We share the other ways that folks attending the meetings can submit their input. And then we also share where people can find their input once it's submitted. So as we know with Bagley Keene, we have to post everything online and available for everyone to see. So ideally in these public input meetings, we would be able to share with those attending, hey, once you submit your Koi, this is where you can find it publicly available. And then the remaining portion of that input meeting to allow for the public to input their Kois. And that's where the question and little discussion is needed, because for me, I see that while we're in virtual setting, will people still stay on the call if we give them the link and they're on their computer and they're on Zoom? And would they just click the link and go ahead and submit Kois through that? Or if they choose to, which they very well may choose to do so, stay on the call and provide that input verbally, how are we capturing that? Who is capturing that? And if they want to provide verbal testimony of where their geography is, this is where my question of, do we have the line drawers there to draw that out? Do we have someone else trained in staff to use the Koi tool to draw that out and submit it directly? And then we can also, and then the third step is once we do get that census data, I see us holding some type of informational session to review all the Kois we have. So summary statistics of a high level, like how many Kois we have received to date, from which place, which geographies we've received them. And then we begin the line drawing portion. And that's where we would have to figure out the pause date of that input piece. This is just an idea. I'm really trying to figure out what happens when I step into the role of a commissioner in the public setting to listen to people about where their communities are and how can I make sure that they're there and they understand that I'm taking in their input. And this is the process to get that input to the commission for consideration. Mm-hmm. Just wanted to share thoughts of trying to put something down on paper in terms of an agenda sort of for these input meetings. Timeline wise, I do see us starting these sooner rather than later. We had discussed in our open meetings, the larger meetings, that June would be a good time for us to start these public input sessions. The question also comes up, do we as a commission still conduct Redistricting 101 basics presentations simultaneously as we hold public input meetings? Or are we going to squish those all into one public input meeting session where we have a portion of it dedicated for a redistricting refresher? And I bring that up because time is going to be of the essence here. We only have, a certain number of hours during the week. Are we going to be able to cover Redistricting 101 presentations as well as input sessions, as well as business meetings? So just trying to be a little realistic about how much time each of us actually have to commit to these efforts moving forward, or if we can consolidate in some way. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Trina?
Yes, thank you, Isra. Very, very helpful, extremely helpful. A couple of things and thoughts on that. Just working backwards because it's at the top of my mind. I'm hoping from the information we've shared from the beginning of doing the redistricting basics that we've put a timeline there, that we will sunset those and allow people to be able to still have access to them via video, the official video we did, or pulling down any one of the others to take a look at that so that we can devote the other time to the new steps as we're moving into. And I thought Commissioner Ahmad did an excellent job of squishing, she said, and outlining those steps. The other piece, another piece that we do need to revisit is the time. So as I was visualizing her remarks that she was saying, and I thought about people that's actually going to be calling in and talking about their communities of interest. I don't think we've had more conversation outside of the initial 2 minutes just for regular public comment, but at some point we're going to need to set a time that will be you know, the right level of time for people to actually describe their communities of interest. And we will need to cycle back and have conversation about what it looks like by the time we take in full maps from our community partners.
Jamie.
Thank you. And just to respond to the question about the public input hearings and the role of the line drawer, certainly we would be able to, if desired, sort of pull up the area on you know, on the map, et cetera. And in terms of actually digitizing it live on screen for everyone to see and then saving it, et cetera, there are a number of sort of technical steps that need to happen that can kind of slow down the process. And so I think that it would probably be smoothest, most efficient, and have the meeting run as quickly as possible to have somebody behind the scenes capturing all of the data in the Koi tool. Additionally, that way, the written testimony or you know, the verbal testimony that's associated with the shape would be sort of embedded in the file automatically. Wouldn't necessarily be the case through creating it through the map that we were working with on Saturday.
So Jamie, that if there was someone in the background interacting with folks who were providing input using the Koi tool, and then they came forward to speak to their submission, the line drawer would need real-time access to the output of the Koi tool.
Line drawers, we're working with USDR to sort of figure out the exact mechanism for this, but we will need to basically have, you know, an export or to download all of the data and then load it into the map. The map that we'll be working with during the line drawing hearings isn't connected to the Koi tool or linked to the Koi tool. So we won't be able to sort of pull up the maps right when somebody clicks send. There are some technical steps that have to happen in between those two things.
Oh, well, I was thinking of more like public input sessions. So so I have a couple questions with regard to public input. So if we use this model where we have 3 locations remotely throughout a zone, can the line drawing team support something like that where they're gathering input from multiple locations and then have that be ready to kind of display and talk to that input in real time?
Similarly, somebody would have to be, you know, submitting it through the Koi tool, and then we would have to download and then be able to display it on a map later. How much later, we're kind of working with USDR to figure out exactly that timeline between submission and being able to sort of download and display the GIS layer.
Okay. So last time though, you did it kind of in real time, or when folks walked up and were sort of drawing lines real time?
Last time I'm sorry, do you mean on Saturday or do you mean
no, last time 10 years ago?
Last redistricting cycle?
Yes.
We would review all the input that came in from email or any way, in addition to the input that came in during the input hearings. And then after the hearings would, go home and digitize it all manually after the fact and refer to the transcripts, refer to the videos, refer to our notes.
Oh, to try to reconstruct what the
Reconstruct it.
Koi looked like on a map. So you didn't
Yes.
map it real time, you reconstructed it. Okay,
Yes.
and yeah, I think we've heard this before. And so just to share with everyone, I mean, this was part of our thinking about this Koi Blitz ahead of time, is to get people to have that input into the system. And Jamie, you talked on Saturday, I think, or at our last meeting, that if somebody, if you know, we could design these meetings, these public input sessions in a way that if somebody wanted to come and talk about a Koi they've already submitted, they could give the code number, and that could be pulled up and we could talk to that. Right. But we can't be drawing Kois in real time.
That's correct.
And the other part of it is you know, these, you know, this 2 minutes and you're done kind of thing, you know, is really tough to, I can imagine. I mean, we didn't get positive input about that. And that if, you know, if we do enable people or encourage folks to submit their Kois ahead of time, then their 2 minutes could be used speaking to a Koi that they've already submitted that we can pull up. Is that doable, Jamie?
Yeah, yes, definitely, with the caveat that if somebody, you know, comes to the hearing and says, oh, I submitted it 5 minutes ago, I want to see it on the map right now, there is some, you know, there's time that it takes just to load it into the map. And if we have especially advance notice to say, I'm going to speak on this Koi specifically, then we can, you know, be sure to load it into the map, and that'll also help line drawers kind of quickly find it on our long list of layers that lists the individual Kois as well.
Okay, and we had talked last time about some sort of a queuing process where you know, that we you know, might envision where folks could sign up to speak at a given time, and if they had a Koi already submitted, that they could in the sign up that they could include that information, so the line drawers could be prepared. So that, I mean, that's something that's doable, but in order, why am I drilling down on this, right? Because in order to facilitate that, we have to have the Kois ahead of time.
We have to, yes. And also, you know, members of the public could also come to the meetings and, you know, tell the commission about a Koi that hasn't already been submitted through the Koi.
Right, right. And there's definitely, I mean, we envision space for that. But, you know, just thinking about, you know, the most effective, you know, how we can be most effective and get the most out of public input, you know, maybe there's a map already there. I don't know. So I have Trina, and then I have Linda, and Jane is waving. Okay.
Yeah, Jane
first, and okay.
Jane was actually before me.
Jane.
I hate to fess up, but she was.
Thank you,
okay.
Jane.
Alicia.
Okay. A couple things on that. Thank you. There are two issues. One, along Neil's line, is for the people who come there and haven't turned in anything. Could we have someone like one of the line drawers, someone actually use the Koi tool and help them say, now, is this your area, using the Koi tool? Would that work? Jamie.
I think that potentially could work. The Koi tool does rely on an internet connection. And I think also, you know, so of course, this might not even be set in stone. And for members of the public who call in using a telephone, they might not have access to seeing the shape on the screen.
Okay. All right. Okay. Great. Thank you. Okay. Then about the how to take care of the couple of issues of to making use of the time, being more efficient, setting up appointments. Obviously, trying to get this is a zone area. This time we're going to talk about this area. Here you can sign up your slot. Put down your already pre-entered Koi. If they can't, I don't remember my number, but if we have as the Koi tool and the way how it's being shown on the our website, the CRC website, and we have it as a California map with dots on it. And can we go in and sort of blow that up and go, oh yeah, that's it. And can it be the representation? Can it be done enough that you could say, that's my Koi? You could click on a particular Koi and open it up in the line drawing program. Like if they don't know the number, could we find the number quickly? Could the representation be done such that the way it was connected would work like that?
Yeah, thanks for that question. I don't know that we can link like an interactive map or a map where you like zoom in and click and say, oh, I found my number. And then I don't think we can link that directly to the line drawing program. But
could it have the number so that then you could go with the number in?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
But don't you have to preload the Kois?
Yes. So depending on, and we would have to preload, right? So I don't know that there would necessarily be a way to link. Somebody submits to the Koi tool and that automatically populates a dot on an online map somewhere. So both of those things would probably have to be either exported to us, downloaded, and then loaded onto the map.
Yeah. No, I'm just wondering in terms of it's a correlation that you do with the data management and the statewide database to get once the Koi tool submission has been there and how we're showing it to the public, you could do it through a map, and on this map it would have the number which had the identifying layers with it, such that during a live presentation, and the guys go, I can't remember, you could go to our website and blow that up, and you could read the number, and then sorry, I'm getting then we could actually look it up and pull it in real time, because again, we've already been saying we're talking about this zone, so you'd know which Kois you already had to be dealing with. So you'd have narrowed down such that you'd have like that file essentially. So you wouldn't be going through the entire program. Is that realistic? Am I seeing possible ways to do this?
I think that without knowing exactly what the data management system is going to look like, it's hard to say how quickly on the fly we could do something like that. I think that something also to consider is whether or not the commission's going to be doing input hearings sort of like this. We're doing San Joaquin County this week, and that's the focus of the input hearing, even if it's a virtual hearing. I think that it will be a lot easier for line drawers to be able to pull up Kois if we can sort of anticipate what general area it will be in, considering there might be a huge number of Kois.
So I think Marion's going to tell us we have to take input from anywhere else to provide input.
You can say you want to concentrate in a certain area, but if someone calls up about a different area, you still have to accept that testimony.
Yes, you do.
I'm well training you.
But you can also say, yes, we can. I'm sorry, we can't show it to you right now.
Yes.
Yes.
So, but you can still.
That was what I was getting to. Thank you, Commissioner Anderson.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry. I have one other thing.
Okay.
One other thing. And during this, we're training the workshop, training the trainers. Why doesn't we talked about our engineer, the redistricting basics, redistricting intermediate. It'll just be all about teaching the Koi. So a lot of this, the commissioners can be doing this. We can turn our training teaching into the commissioners' presentations, pretty much one of them is emphasizing the Koi tool. And when I'm doing my presentation, I noticed I saw the one today, I'm sort of very different. I'm emphasizing if any of your communities of interest are going to cross city lines, county lines, those are really, really important, and do it now, because those we don't know about. And, I'm emphasizing that. And people are, they're saying, great, great, great. That's what we need to know. How do we put it together? And also is what issues, like, they've talked about, I liked my 2010 district. Why did they like it? But more importantly, something came up at one of our remote hearings, and it was to get a line where it is. There was huge issues about it couldn't be, the lines can be proposed someplace else, which kind of looks normal, and it's a disaster. And so all that input was put in to make the line where it is. And I said, then that's information you have to put in right now. We need the line here, and we do not want it because it was going to go through basically separate an Air Force base from essentially where all the people live. And we would never know that. And so, like, why a district was in 2010 or was not in 2010 is important information to give us now. So those were
okay. Thanks, Jane.
Yeah. Okay. So
Trina?
Me? Yeah, good. I want to go back because I want to make sure the Koi tool the community of interest tool was not available during the last cycle, and we have it available now. And it is a method for people to use the tool to submit to us their community of interest and any verbiage, any kind of verbal, whatever they want, written testimony that they want to provide associated with it. I want to make sure that we're not encouraging people to also call us and retell us what they've already provided through the Koi tool. If it's in the Koi tool, if people write out what their descriptions are, then we will get that and we will respond to that. I feel like we're spending an awful lot of time trying to also figure out when people have submitted their Koi information and their written information. Yes, the tool connects the two. It will be available. We can pull it up. We can look at the GIS. We can match it to what they've already put into the tool. And I don't think that people need to also call in and say, now about my Koi, I want to tell you again about it, because the work to me then becomes duplicative. And so I just wanted to state that, number one, if you use the tool, it's reliable, it's wonderful, it's thorough, it will absolutely communicate your need, number one. Now, in addition to that, someone that did not use the tool, did not know how to access it by itself, or chose not to, because we're not trying to discourage anyone. I am trying to discourage duplicate information coming in from the same person because they think we didn't get it or did not receive it. And then, so that's the first point. The other point is that on the, when we, particularly from a data management perspective, we started talking about like a heat map, dots on a map that would tell us if we're receiving submissions in from a certain geographic area of the state, and to see how many we're getting in, and either they're larger because there's a lot or smaller and all of those different things. That serves a purpose of letting us know, have we engaged the full state in all of the nooks and crannies, all of the areas. I think it a different issue and not as initially intended from my perspective, that we need to now be able to provide assistance to people that can't find their Kois to use those dots to locate which Koi was theirs. I think that's, again, a different issue. We probably can provide some support and assistance to people that have lost their Koi, but those dots on that map was initially, I think, designed for us to say, hey, in this part of Northern California, there are no submissions coming through the Koi tool or through any manner that we've received it. We need to blitz that area. We need to make sure they're getting the information out there. And so if there's a different thought about that, I think we should talk about it, because again, if we try to do too much with too many of the tools, I think we start to make it convoluted and not as helpful as it can be. And it delays, to me, the design process of trying to get all of these tools in and working together. Then the last part is I want to emphasize the ability of our Koi tool to automatically link written testimony. Other tools and systems that are out there will allow us to receive shape files, et cetera. But what I've learned is that there are other steps, workarounds to then be able to follow up and connect what might be written testimony with shape files that they've received. And we have a tool that we've created that will do it all for you. And I highly want to recommend to all of our community groups and partners that they are utilizing the tool that's been created for us that will work best with what we're trying to do and ensure that your written testimony is linked in with your maps that you're providing. Thank you.
Okay, I think we had Alicia.
I think Linda was first.
Okay, Linda.
All right. I'm sorry, I'm just going to say this out loud. We're 2 hours and 15 minutes in. And I think we, I appreciate the document, what you put. I think I am going to go back to what Isra said. And to me, I guess that was my initial thought of that was the purpose of this committee, is to at least get to some of the basics. I think talking about some of the line drawing and some of these other things, I think it's important, but I feel like we need to get some of these other things put in place first before we start worrying about like these other things. I think we're kind of going a little out of sequence. And I think, for the full commission, I think we, what we're looking for is, how many are we going to have? Where are the locations? Are we going to have the entire commission go? Or as suggested in the document, is it just going to be one at a time? Is that the recommendation that then you're asking that we as a public input design committee then submit to the full commission? Because then I think that's a different conversation that we have not yet had. I like what
Linda, can I comment on that real quick? We're not proposing one commissioner at a time. We understood that there was a Bagley-Keene requirement that a commissioner had to attend in person at a venue. We're not assuming that only one commissioner would attend. We're kind of assuming all the commissioners will attend in a virtual sense, but that we understood as a Bagley-Keene requirement that one commissioner had to be physically present at each location that we're hosting the public.
If you're talking about a physical location, that's true.
The idea would be we wanted to build on what we've heard from the community, that even if we do them virtually, we still need to have locations where people can come because of internet access issues and other issues. And if we have, and so we said, okay, well, let's look at 3 different locations. So we're doing the far northern California. We're doing Zone B. We will have one place where people can come in Chico. Another one they'll come in. Now I have to look at all. In 2 of the other counties, because there's 10 counties. So we would spread them out. I liked what Trina had to say last time, that it would be an equitable distance. So we would think about, how do we look at distance, and that the hearing would be for the whole area or the conversation or whatever we call it, but we would have 3 in-person sites where people can go to make sure that people have access to us. And in those, we would need to have commissioners.
So I guess 1, that's not clear. And 2, I guess it still goes back to, is this what you're suggesting to us, the committee? Because again, I think these are the things that I feel like that's what I've heard Isra asking, I've heard Alicia asking, and I know I'm asking the same thing, and I'm a little unclear about that. And I feel like we should have that conversation. Do we have, if we're going to have a virtual one, can we do virtual like what we're doing right now with all of us on? If we're going to have, I hear what you're saying about we need to have an in-person location, but that's where I think we also have to make a recommendation as to when that in-person location will actually happen. Will we try to have the entire commission if it's possible, or if it's a combination of both? I mean, that's a conversation to have. But when would that actually take place? I think these are some of the, I guess I'm thinking like I want to get down to some of the specifics, and I think we've been dancing around some of these things, and I think we got to start getting down to it. I also just, Neil, I'm just going to say this too, because you asked what are we feeling, and I think it would be nice to hear from every one of the commissioners on here. I do have to ask about, hiring 15 outreach workers. I mean, I guess I know that it's to try to get things moving, but I'm thinking about how long it'll take to hire 15 people and then train them. And then by the time they're up and running, I will say, I don't think it's going to be quite as fast as we might hope it would be. I also want to say that as being a part of the grants subcommittee, we have not abandoned the idea of giving out the grants yet. So I want to be clear about that. We just had a setback in terms of how that process would go, but it has not been abandoned. So that is still a possibility. And so I think that's why I'm just a little concerned about, having this idea of hiring people using those outreach funds when it has not been abandoned just yet. And so I guess, I don't know, again, I mean, if this is the better way to go, I mean, yeah, if this is a recommendation that the committee wants to make, then we'll have to have a conversation with the full commission around this too, because the full commission has, we've gone in a different a different direction. So, anyways.
Okay. Yeah, no, thanks. And we appreciate that input. I'll comment. I think we felt like we were being pretty concrete about what we were proposing, but clearly that is not coming across. And so, and that's great feedback. So thank you. I think we're, Alicia.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so I will try to be focused. I've got my little Post-it with notes here. In terms of the Koi Blitz, I like the concept, and I'm going to piggyback a little bit off of Linda because I wasn't sure about the grant funding being available. I'm not understanding why we can't use, right now we are recruiting for the outreach, the 8 positions, why we can't use those 8 positions plus maybe students, because it will be during the summer. So that might be a better use of our funds and resources to do that versus permanent full-time staffing. Also, I keep harping on this in terms of the zones, and we talk about how many staff to dedicate to each zone. We also need to be aware and cognizant of density of population. That's one way to look at it. Also, another way is volume of land. So let's not only look at one way to do it. And in terms of, there was something else I had. What was it? The community conversations, I still don't agree with that in terms of that happening in late June to early September. I believe that type of conversation, if I'm understanding it correctly, would come later, like in September or so. And then I'm going to kind of respond to Trina's in terms of, if somebody submitted their Koi, there's no reason for them to submit another, come to a meeting or submit public input. Completely agree with that. I think the only time you would have something like that would be after we've released our draft maps, maybe because they want to explain it, which, for sure we would want to hear. But I completely agree with you, Trina, and maybe I need to think of that when I give my presentations, is maybe stress that. And when I do stress it in the presentation. You can do it this way, that way, or that way. But maybe just be a little bit more direct in terms of that. So thank you for that reminder, Trina.
Right. I think I had Isra next.
So I'll wait to see where this conversation goes before I jump in again.
Okay. Marcy, did you want to raise your hand? Or did you raise your hand? Okay. All right. Okay.
Oh, I did have one quick, sorry.
Okay. I think Patricia had her hand up, and then we'll go to Jane.
So I think you all are kind of feeling a lot of what Neil and I were feeling after last meeting, moving up to here and trying to put different pieces. There's a lot of big question marks. And so even hearing that we haven't given up the idea of grants, that's great, but the reality is grants for what at this point? I mean, we need people out there doing the community organizing and letting people understand what are, what is a meaningful Koi. That's and I think we can shift our presentations and such to that, addressing what someone said about, stopping our education sessions. I think that yes, we do hit a point where hopefully we can use media and other ways to just talk about, send people to what we've already done. But I just got a request for one in September because it's Constitution Day and the university wanted to do it. And I said, well, if we do it that late, my recommendation is that it just focuses on talking about communities of interest and how you can submit. There are ways that we can turn things into what we need at that phase. But I guess I'm really struggling, and I've been struggling from the very beginning. When we talk about communities of interest, it's about a group of people. It's not an individual. And where I'm struggling is even when looking at the recommendations from the brainstorming session last time, someone said, well, can't we just go to festivals and give people tablets so people can input their Kois? But from my understanding about a meaningful community of interest is that there has been a conversation among a group of people or some thinking behind it, and that it's not an individual's perception of what a Koi is, but what a group's perception of what a Koi is. And that's what makes it meaningful. And I guess I'm struggling a little on that. And I'm also, I think I really liked what you had to say about kind of how to set up the agenda. I hadn't really thought about it could be just another here, just people submitting their Kois right there, just helping them, kind of train the trainer, but right there and they're submitting it. But I still feel that there is that need to educate. We've gotten better at it, but we still need to go deeper on what is a community of interest and how to define it, how to have those conversations. And we've started it, but I don't think we've gone deep enough. And so that's where the idea of the Blitz came into place, or the blanket of having people out there. Yes, it takes a long time to hire. Sorry, Annie, it takes a long time to hire, but our thought was we're hiring right now for outreach, a lot of different outreach. So we have a lot of resumes coming in right now. If we're going to hire people to help do this, because we don't know if we can get the grant dollars out, if we hire them now, and the student idea is a great one, as long as we're giving them stipends, which I know that we do have, that it is stipend, then that's another great way to go. But I want to emphasize we have the resumes now to make that decision. That's where that decision was coming from. Because if we decide to do it, a month from now or 6 weeks from now, then we just it's another 6 weeks to 2 months till those people can start.
So I have Jane, Alicia, and Isra.
Thanks. I've got two comments. One was actually it was back to Trina's when she was talking about what I had a different understanding from the Koi map on our CRC website, saying it's more like a heat map. So we have an idea. The commission has an idea of what we receive where and what we still need to go for. I thought that was the bonus, but the real purpose of it was so the public could see, my submission is there. And then we would also be using it for, both. It would be use it for two purposes. But I thought the number one purpose is it's the easiest way for the public to see that their information is, boom, it's in my area. Wow, that's me. And and then I thought if you went in, you could actually, I didn't realize there was a number, but you could kind of see. And then we, of course, would look at it and go, okay, now we need more information in those areas. So I'm glad we had this conversation because I had it clearly from the other perspective where you saw it as a heat map first. But I don't think since that hasn't been exactly devised, I don't think it's an issue one way or another. I think it's just a question of how it's put in. I don't think it's that big a deal. But and then second on Patricia, and I don't think you implied this at all, but I know someone's going to say it comes across that way because we've heard it a bit before. The idea about the community of interest tool, you're saying that it should, you don't just draw it right there. It should come back from a group that has really put input on it. But a community of interest from an individual is just as valid as a community of interest that has been put together from a group. Because remember, it's, how many, remember the idea of, is each individual in the group submits the same group or one submits it for all, versus an individual who comes from a smaller rural area and they're the only representative that they sent. And so they're just putting theirs in, or they're the only ones who ever speaks up anyway. But everyone else in the area knows, well, I don't have to say anything because they're going to go and do it for us. And so I just want to make sure, I know you weren't implying, I mean, we're going to take all information, obviously, and take it in.
So I was asking a question. So, and just where I'm struggling. And so that's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that, because I certainly this is from the rural input where we've been, that is concern. And the other concern that I've gotten is in terms of how do they know that their input is received, which is why several people have said, so is it best for me to then bring up my Koi, like to come to a public meeting after I've submitted it to make sure it's there and tell you about it? And I want us in our meetings to say, no, you don't have to. Once we have the Koi submitted through this Koi tool, it's there. And Jamie said, and Trina just eloquently said, brought it back up again, is it turns out that using the Koi tool is the best way to submit a community of interest. There's many other free community of interest tool mappings that you can use, and we will certainly take them. The commission will take them, but then they have to be, they have to go through the data management system and have to be transcribed and connected to the verbal and the GIS sheet, and then fed in. So it has a whole nother step involved, where the community of interest tool, it goes directly. It's all linked together and it's a direct input. And I didn't realize that until last Saturday. And that was a very, very valuable information. So I wanted to bring all those points forward. And then, then I'm also the timeline. Let's get to it. Let's put stuff on paper.
I'm sorry, what? I didn't hear that.
The timeline. Let's say, right, we're doing this here and this here and this here. I do have ideas on that, but I'm letting you guys do it.
Okay. And then I have Isra and then Andrew.
And Alicia.
And Alicia. Okay, sorry.
No worries. I appreciate this conversation, and I'm looking at the time and the minutes keep on ticking further. I think we should really focus this conversation to virtual input meetings because that's our reality right now. And until we have information to move to an in-person, that's when we can have that discussion. as of right now, today, we are in a virtual world and we will continue to be so for the foreseeable future until something changes. So in terms of virtual public input meetings, again, I would really like to uplift that we select some dates to recommend to the full commission for June. And we set an agenda on how that structure is going to look like. And bring forward to the full commission the question of how we want to best utilize our line drawers within those sessions and what they need, and learn from them what they need in those community input sessions so we can best plan and organize from our organizational perspective for those things. I also want to bring in our team into this conversation too, to understand better what they need as well. We're not working in a silo. We have to work with our team to see what the realities of our planning is. So I just wanted to uplift that. Again, dates and agenda, and learn from our team what is the reality in specifically this virtual public input meeting sessions that we will be having hopefully soon. Can we start with that, or do we have other comments, thoughts on that?
I don't think we have consensus about starting public input meetings in June. I know some people feel that and others don't. So I think first we need to see, do we have that consensus? Because I was hearing from Alicia that we should push them back. And so I think, so Alicia, can you clarify? I thought you said not June, but September.
Patricia, I can actually speak to that because this is from the outreach plan that the full commission approved, that we would start our public input meetings in June. This is not something new that is coming out. This is a discussion we've had in our full commission meeting to start these sessions in June. If that is to change, and if we feel like that needs to change, then by all means, let's have that conversation. But that consensus has already been reached with the full commission, from my understanding.
I gotta, Isra, I gotta be honest, I don't see a schedule in the outreach plan.
I'll link you. Hold on a second.
Okay, thank you.
I'll step back then. Go ahead.
Okay. So Andrew, then Alicia.
Yeah, I was just going to follow up on Commissioner Turner and Commissioner Anderson's comments about the data, and when people submit through the Koi, one of the things we're working with USDR is making sure who are the end users of the data. Of course, you have the commissioners, you have the map jars, you have the lawyers, and you have the public. And that's one thing that we're aiming to do, is making sure that there's a component of that. If somebody submits something through the Koi tool, it is also that the public can see it. So if they submit it, they can go on and see into the public database and see that they're submitted and that it's taken care of, that they don't have any question if it's submitted or not. So, I guess, when talking to individuals or groups who are submitting through the Koi tool, assure them that there's multiple steps to make sure that their input is being heard. So I just wanted to comment on that real quick.
My turn.
Yeah, Alicia, sorry.
I'll just go. There was, what is that called? Dead time in radio. You never want that. So I'll just go. In no way did I ever imply that because I like the Blitz, or I don't want to say I like the Blitz. I'm okay with the Blitz, but that can also be, the public input meetings can also be occurring at the same time. I see Blitz as a training component, which does not take away from the public input meetings, if that makes sense. And then also I did want to respond, as Jane did also, that a Koi is an individual. It's an individual input, and that's how I've been in my presentations. That's how we've said it in our meetings. That's how we said it, that we want you, specific person, to submit communities of interest. It can be done as a group, but then again, I'm not sure how we would capture that in our Koi tool if it was done by a group versus an individual, because each one is done individually. And then my other question was, right now, I'm not comfortable going or comfortable approving or going forward with additional positions, because I I kind of feel like we're blindsiding the grants subcommittee, like trying to take their money away from them when they're not done with their process. And I understand we've got timing issues, and but I'm not comfortable establishing new permanent positions with funding that we don't really know is available at this time, because there may be other ways. They're still researching it. They're still looking at other avenues, potential avenues. And in terms of the concern of established positions, we have the resumes now. I'm just going to remind everyone that we are exempt from hiring, some of the hiring roles. And if we have resumes now, we could keep those resumes. And if we interview people now, we can keep those resumes and that information for future vacancies. So I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Alicia. And I just want to say again, we weren't trying to usurp the role of the grants committee or what the grants committee is doing. It was just an idea we had, not knowing what's happening with the grants. So that's all. And we certainly didn't want to offend anyone. And so, so kind of if you look at the timeline, pretty much at the bottom of the document that we put out. There's not a difference, a substantive difference, I would say, between community conversations and public input meetings. It's just terminology, but our thought as far as timing was begin those in late June through early September. Kind of taking into the thought process that we would try to spend some time now transitioning our education process from redistricting basics to Koi input, and what, not just how to use the Koi tool, but what does good Koi input look like, and then gather as much input as we can through the tool that we have now that they didn't have then, and then hold public input meetings mid-June through early September. And then when you talk about the date, the tentative date for pausing input would kind of be that mid-September. Then we'd have a couple weeks to regroup, kind of look at what we got, sort of do a bit of regrouping before the data came, the Koi or the census data came to us, and we began to look at that and began to actually do some line drawing. So that's what we had in mind. Is that kind of schedule for beginning to get community input in June? I think is consistent with what the thinking of the group is. Is that kind of consistent with where everyone's at? So if we assume that, I think it's sort of, this is the, the version I had said we were going to start doing it in April, getting public input in April, which is out the window, right? Go ahead, Alicia. I'm completely messed my whole program up here.
No, I put my hand up and they said, "Oh," I'm like, "Oh, let me put it down." No, I
can't see anybody.
You can't see anyone. Did you close out, Neil? Oops, you're on mute. Or yeah, you got it.
Okay, I'm back.
Are you back? Okay, good. Glad to have you back, Neil. In terms of the timeline, I think it looks fine. Again, public input versus community conversations. I'm good with the public input meetings, as you mentioned, from late June to early September. And in terms of the Koi Blitz, I see that can occur at the same time. So the timeline, other than community conversations, I'm fine with, from my perspective.
Okay, I'm sorry, I was distracted. I think Linda had her hand up. I didn't know if anyone else did.
Marcy, I got her.
Okay. Linda, did you, yeah, Linda?
I thought I was being ignored because you didn't want to hear from me anymore.
No, I definitely want to hear from you.
Okay, so I think couple things. One is I think, maybe, I mean, we don't have to do a lot in June, but I was just thinking we could continue to do the public education plus maybe do like some 1 or 2 public input sessions so that we could maybe work out some of the kinks and see what it's going to really feel like. Because I think we're kind of doing this with guesswork. Like we don't, given like, maybe we try it out with the virtual, we just kind of create a plan for what one could be and then see how it goes. And then figure out where, other things that we need to kind of figure out for when we do, a more intense set of, public input meetings. But maybe we use like between June and July, we do just kind of like a soft launch of the public input meetings just to test it out. I'm not sure about this community conversations, to be honest. I think it's maybe more the name or the title of calling it community conversations that may be getting in the way versus like what it is that you're trying to do. Because I feel like maybe we've been trying to like position it as something else and now it's being called this other name and it's just like, wait, are you talking about something the same? Is it something different? I think sometimes when we do try to do this without really a clear explanation, it looks like something else, but it's called something else. And so I don't know if that's where my confusion is coming from, but yeah, I just think I'd just like to do that. I think in terms of the education, I think we can continue to do it at least, through the summer here and there. I know we have some that are scheduled, I think, through July at the very least. So as far as I know, I think I'm scheduled to do one at least into July. So that's why I'm just saying that, there's going to be this kind of period of overlap and transition where we're going from a lot of education to input and then less education and more input. I kind of see the scheduling going like that.
Yeah, we agree. And in the I kind of like the idea of the soft launch idea. We probably need to get a little bit harder on picking dates. I mean, we had it a little bit spread out so it would be easier on we're thinking to spread it out a little more so it'd be easier on the commission and the staff, so that we weren't, having these 5 meetings in a week kind of thing like they did last time. But yeah, okay, thank you. And then Marcy?
Thank you. This has been really valuable to go over all these different ideas in today's meeting. I see that Alvaro's raising his hand too, so I'll just quickly, given the later in June, does that squish some of the time that the commission was maybe originally thinking? And does that make it more compact depending on where you want to have these meetings across the state? So I guess as the conversation continues into identifying dates and locations, looking at that spread, just like you had mentioned, Commissioner Fornashari.
Yeah, well, I think yeah, okay. Yeah, very good. Thank you. Alvaro?
Yes, so I'm going to try to bring some levity to this conversation. A rose is a rose is a rose, right? Or a duck is a duck. I don't know which one is best. But what I was going to say is that with the public input meetings, I think what we can do from the staff perspective, we can provide some possible dates. I had kind of drafted a soft plan, that I could share with you. We could start talking about those dates and present them to the commission, because we still do have to plan our business meetings out and any future meetings for the month of June. I was looking at the calendar. We have May, but we don't have anything in June. So we could really consider putting some of those dates in June to do this soft launch and have a few, not every week having 3 or 4, but have a few that we can kind of help us solidify that design that we're talking about here today. Is it going to be, obviously for this go around, it'll be virtual up until the 15th. And then after that, we don't know what it's going to be. But for the virtual ones, I think that's going to be the standard moving forward that we can build off of. If we have that solidified, we can definitely expand it to the in-person presentations, because I do think it is going to be a hybrid where we have that capability of live streaming it and also having a limited, and I do think it's going to be very limited in-person traffic, unlike it was done 10 years ago where you had people just standing around. I don't think we'll be able to house that many people. And then from the staffing perspective, we have to start looking at venues if we're going to go in person, where those venues are, start scheduling that out. We have to work with our videographer folks to make sure that they're able to coordinate that. And there's a lot of other things that need to be coordinated in that effort, and that is part of our plan. So Marcy and Patricia have been working on the onboarding plan for our field staff. That's part of that plan. If we're going to modify that plan, then we need to, or we're going to modify the input meetings to call them something else, even though they're input meetings. If they're going to be different, then we need to modify our plans and how we adjust to that. My last point in regards to the staffing, we have limited staffing. I do like the idea of the student assistants. They were part of the plan and are still part of the plan, but not until we actually got into the public input meetings, when we would start needing them to be at the facilities to help coordinate the effort there. So that was already part of the planning that we had behind the scenes. So I just wanted to share all those points with you all. Thank you.
Well, what, Alvaro, you said you had some proposed dates, I thought.
Yes, I do have some proposed dates, not with me now, but I can share those with you because I had mapped everything out. We were done in December, or whether it be February, whatever the dates. I had kind of mapped out everything, including the line drawers. But that was just my interpretation. It wasn't through any of the subcommittees. But I've been waiting to share some of that information. But what I'm hearing now is that we'd like to do some soft launch. And so in planning and moving forward in scheduling our business meetings, we should allocate some time to have a public input meeting. So that's what I'm referring to. And that's a discussion I think we're going to have next week when we start looking at the calendar for the June meetings. And I'll share what I have so that you have at least an idea of what I was thinking.
I got Jane and then Patricia.
I just have one question. Before we do any public input meetings, I believe, and that's maybe it's not true, don't we need to have all the data management stuff up and working? And how are we collecting any of this information? And how are we sorting it so we can actually use it? And are we
Yes, sir.
backing it up?
You're gonna answer that question?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks.
The answer is that public input has already started to come in, and we don't have a system up and running. I think where it will become absolutely critical to have our system running smoothly is when we need to recall that information for our deliberations. Even though it will be at work on our data people to get this system up and running and input all of the input we've already received to date from last August till now. Folks have called in and gave their community of interest input. That's still sitting in the ether somewhere. So that will need to be established into our system. I don't think we have to pause on our input sessions and wait for our system to be fully up and running. That can happen simultaneously.
Tricia?
Just a follow-up on that point, Israel. So, so I was looking at the agenda, kind of a blend of what you had proposed and what we had proposed, I don't think that we necessarily need to do a redistricting overview piece at the beginning. I mean, there'll be certain introduction remarks, but I do feel that it's important, since we're not traveling, to be able to get a snapshot of the communities that we can't visit from the community. So have someone kind of share that perspective. And then we had, I think you had said, and I may have misheard you, but that we share what we have. Could we share what we have if we don't have the data management system? Or so we may have to bring that in at later time? Or is there a way that we can share just by verbally share what we have by just looking at what we have at the Koi tool? Yeah. Or Trina.
Patricia, ask your question again.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. So when we were talking about in the agenda, when we were talking about the public input session, and we did tweak the way we're looking at them, and you did a great job of that, Ezra, of helping us see it as we've got the tool now, so we want to, in one part of it, well, okay. My question is, we had said that part of what we wanted to do was share the input that we have already received for that region. And I'm using region versus zones because, but that region, would we be able to share the data that we have for that region if we do them in June and July, or would we have to do something different for that part of it? I mean, we might just be, could we at least say we have 15 Kois? I don't know.
Yeah, I think for sure, my response would be, I would prefer that we begin by sharing how many Kois we have. We talked about moving forward and ramping up and getting better as we go. And so I would not imagine us staying in any one region, allowing them to be the guinea pigs while we get our stuff together and then count them done and move forward, right? So wherever we start, I think we will be able to say, this is how many Kois we know that now. This is how many Kois that we've received. Even whether we narrow it down or not, we're just getting them. We don't have to have it perfected just then. What we don't want to do is to hold up the process while we're waiting to get a data manager on, while we're waiting to get the system complete and perfected and what have you. We can still move forward so that when we come back into that area or a little bit later in the timeline, when we're saying we are now drawing lines, or we're now taking input rather for San Joaquin County, Central Valley, we're able then to say, and this is what input looks like so far. We don't have to meet with it.
Yeah, I guess, so the question that comes to my mind, I appreciate what you said, Trina, is that we don't want to make one region a guinea pig and then not come back. So I'm wondering if for our first few virtual meetings, do we even want to focus on a region or keep it open? I don't know. I'm throwing that out there. Just open it to the state and let's work through the bugs. And we're not. Oh, Alicia has a comment.
Shocking as that is. And that's what I was going to ask is like, okay, so now that we've decided on potentially moving forward with public inputs, we'll have to, I think now we need to drill down on like the location or zone. And when you Neil, when you mentioned open it up statewide, I'm also wondering, do we somehow limit it? Like, okay, we're only going to do 6 hours worth, because if you open it statewide, I mean, I have no idea how many people, versus if you limit it to a zone, at least maybe it would be more manageable. But of course, we don't know. And especially in a virtual world, you could have either of the two, right? Either you're going to have more people because they don't have to leave their home and they can do it from home. Or if we also have a place for them to be, you could have twice as many. So I don't know. But anyway, so I think now that we've decided to move forward, we need to pick the dates, the location, what the format's going to look like. I agree I think it was Alvaro or Marcia, I can't remember. You mentioned maybe starting in mid-June, which I think is good, because if we wait until end of June and then try to, take a few steps back, do some lessons learned, then it's pushing back the July timing, right? So if we can get those in, and again, we'll have to work those with the business meetings as well, but that will be secondary that we can discuss next week. So thank you.
So I think inherent in my an unstated assumption in my comment was that we would have some sort of queuing process where people would sign up for a time, and there would be just a certain number of time for folks to sign up, although we would be required to take public comment, but general public comment. But Marion, we can limit the amount of time we take general public comment. Is that correct? So I think for the, maybe, I don't, it's just my thinking for the first few times we have a queuing system. It's statewide. It's not the only chance that people are going to get. There's going to be lots of chances. So Isra.
I really like that idea. We should use ourselves as guinea pigs and work through the kinks there. And I think we can even limit the whole time frame of the meeting itself. Puts a little pressure on us, Trina, because it'll be coming in from all over the place. We haven't figured out our tags yet, which is forthcoming, I guess, in discussion. But it's nothing different than what has happened already, right? When folks call in during public comment and share their community of interest input, it goes to the commission directly. We see it. It's posted on our website. It's just a matter of us organizing that input for deliberations when we bring it back up. But I really like that idea of hybrid of soft launch while using ourselves as guinea pigs before we start doing concentrated outreach in specific geographic areas.
Okay. Is my idea? Oh, Linda, sorry. Yes, Linda.
Yeah, I want to I want to just say I like that idea of using ourselves as the kind of the test instead of like going to a specific region. And I think I also like the idea of testing out the queuing system too, to see how that works. And it'll also give us an idea of, the very first one, how many people we may get more and we may get less, but if we get more, or if we have to cut it off at a certain place, it also gives us an indication of the kind of demand maybe that it's going to generate. So there's a lot of pluses upsides, I guess I'll say, to just trying it out this one time. And so we could test the queuing, we could test how people would give input, and then we could also test how many people are actually going to call in for that very first one.
Yeah, it was, I got to be honest, I was pleasantly surprised how many people called in today to ask questions at our presentation. So I guess Jamie and Andrew, are we giving you guys heartburn? What are your thoughts?
No heartburn. And I think what's been said tonight makes a lot of sense. And I think starting off with something makes sense. And I think it's going to, be tweaked over time. And then the other thing is just sort of what sort of comments are coming in, because as we've discussed here, not everything is going to be related to the Koi tool. A lot of comments are going to be coming through that, but there's going to be comments about just general, redistricting ideas and thoughts that have nothing to do with Koi. So that's the other thing. So I think there's going to be comments. So I think getting started sooner than later and just doing some test runs makes a lot of sense. And from my standpoint, and I'll let Jamie speak, but I think this just diving in and starting to do it makes the most sense. And there's going to be some wrinkles along the way that will get worked out in the early meetings. And by, as we expand and do a broader launch in July and August with more public input meetings, I think it's going to run much more smoother. But if we don't get started, agree, like getting started sooner than later, to just get our feet wet, learn from our mistakes, and getting started. I think that's going to be the best possible way to figure out what's going on.
Jamie, anything to add or?
I don't have, thank you, Andrew. And I don't have a ton to add. And I'm seeing Commissioner Kutagawa's hand up for a little bit. So I'll pass the mic.
Yeah, Linda.
I think I just wanted to ask a question of Andrew and Jamie. I didn't say anything earlier about, like whether or not you could have a map up or whatever, but maybe anticipating that there's going to be a queue of people. I wonder if there's a way to, kind of like before they make it into the queue to actually give their testimony, maybe they can go to a different place where they can first say where they want to talk about, so that then, maybe it makes it easier for you if you really want to have, if they want to talk about a map and you want to have a map up. I don't know. I mean, this is just one of those kind of test things that, is that feasible? Or does it make sense?
Yeah, thank you for that question. I think that is possible. One idea is that could be part of the kind of form that people fill out when they're, asking to become a speaker. They could say, and I'm in Stockton, or and I'm in Lodi, or I'm in Walnut Creek, or wherever they are. And that can help line drawers to sort of prepare to move the map to a specific location. As opposed to, I guess, hearing it right on the spot.
Go ahead, Linda.
I was just going to say, maybe you could group them too. Like if you know that if you're going to create a queuing like appointment system, maybe you could say, okay, let's have all the Walnut Creek people, all go in a row, and then have all the Stockton people go all in a row, and all the San Diego people. That might make it also easier, because then you're not flipping back and forth on the map if you know ahead of time where they want to speak about it. And you could give them an appointment time based on that, where they want.
Yeah, just based on experience, I think that would make it faster.
Okay. I was going to say something, but I forgot. I was going to say Patricia.
I don't want to get us too far into the weeds on those pieces. I wanted to make sure, check in to see if we have consensus on what the agenda would be for the first few soft launches. We had spoken, if it was a region, we would get an overview of the region, but maybe we just do an overview of the state. I don't know. Yeah, we could think of, but just some type of intro comments, and share what we have. So since it's a state, we could just say we have 30 Kois that, we have received this many inputs. Explain kind of the Koi tool and actually show how to use it online, and encourage people if they're that they can pull it up, and give them time to kind of play with it and submit their Kois. So we wanted to see how many people could actually, if we get people to submit their Kois that way versus public testimony. And then I just had a quick question here. If we did that, I know we have some folks who are trained to help people who are having trouble. Could there be a phone number where they could call if they're trying to do their Koi at that moment? That's just a thought. We don't need to answer. But then, so give time for people to complete their Kois, and then go into the verbal testimonies and see, if you've already, and reiterate, as Trina said, if you've already submitted your Koi, we will have it. But if you didn't want to submit it that way, please go ahead and share your verbal testimony, and also show other ways that you can submit it, if it's in writing or mail it in, or email, the other things. And then after the testimonies are done, just a brief, what are the next steps? What will happen next?
how long do we want to give each person? Thoughts on that? Oh, Alicia.
I would recommend 2 minutes. That should be enough time for them. And this is with the assumption that we're not going to draw the Koi right at that moment, and we're not going to, look for whatever. 2 minutes should be sufficient time for them to explain what the boundaries are and what their Koi is and why it's important to them. As long as you're just concise. But my other comment too was the whole appointment. It's a great idea. We could also set it up so that we already have, like, from 8 to 9 is going to be Walnut Creek, and then you can sign up for a time then instead of the other way around. And then also that's what I would recommend for if we go into areas where we know that there might be some language access interpreter needs, we could also designate certain time, like 1 or 2 hours for specific language, and then you would submit your name during that time frame, just to try to be more efficient with our interpreters and our line drawers.
Yeah. I think so I kind of feel like those two suggestions are kind of later in the process, not immediately for our first couple test runs. Marcy.
I guess I would recommend that even though you're going to have a test run, that you still plan out the next few months, locations, dates, and everything, but that the structure could change, but you don't want to wait until June after you do a few test runs to then schedule out the rest of the dates.
Right. I think Alvaro has made so we'll bring Alvaro's ideas in and I guess use that as a baseline for planning, at least a starting point. Patricia.
No, I was going to say, I think I would say for the test case, I would like to test out the appointment and figure out if we use zones or whatever, or Northern California and Southern California, just to see how we can, figure out the appointment thing and make it use. And along with the language access, I think we do need to practice as much as we can with interpreters. So I would say for the June, July, the soft launch, we would want to include all that. I would encourage staff. Staff has a plan to relook at it based on the changes that have taken place with census and all that. A lot of the dates and stuff was based pre where we are now. But I definitely feel I feel pretty strongly on, like you said, Neil, Alvaro. Bring us that thought. I've taken lots of notes. You guys have given just so much great information. And my thought is that we don't present, I would like to propose that we don't present anything at just a general outline kind of our thoughts, that we will start a public input sessions. We will be shifting our public education to emphasize community, giving meaningful community of interest input, and that includes all our communications, all our op-eds, everything just kind of shifted to that, and we will need to meet on the 28th with a more with taking everything everybody said, and if somebody wants to take everything that's said and create the next steps, because again, Neil, this is a collaborative committee with Neil and I just haven't been appointed by you all to chair it, but we said, hey, at any point, anybody else can chair it. So if someone wants to take everything, everything that we've worked on and work with Alvaro for the next steps, I won't speak for Neil, but please feel free to step up and do that. Yeah, I saw Trina and then Neil. I'll step back.
Thank you. I just wanted to call to your attention that you spoke this last time for almost 3 minutes. I am concerned that we're encouraging people to submit their Koi and describe what's important for you and to talk about festivals and parks and all of the things that we want them to talk about and give geography and limit them to 2 minutes. I think we should look at maybe 3 minutes. And I understand what we're talking, which in our presentations, we can again encourage them to get all of what you want into the Koi tool. I should be selling this thing because I totally am bought into the community of interest tool. But telling them that please submit, because the same kind of, you won't have the same constraints. You will get an opportunity to think about what you want, and you'll get an opportunity to input it there. So that to me should be the priority that we're pushing. By the time people call in to work through, what do I want to say and to talk about it, et cetera, they will not, I don't believe, get through unless they're calling to say, leave me the same, don't move my area. You know, that's great. But all of what we're encouraging people to do is, I think, going to take the average person more than 2 minutes to do so.
I agree with that. So I thought I saw Linda first and then Jane and then Alicia.
Yeah, I just wanted, I mean, because it's still fresh. I mean, in our script, it says, tell us your stories and tell us about your communities of interest and everything. So yeah, it's a great point, Trina.
Jane?
I love Trina's point. And a little bit of what we're doing here is we're confusing Koi training and public input sessions. And I think we've all decided trying to teach them how to use the Koi in the public input session is not the best use of anyone's time. And if we do this in our training and our education sessions, they can really get better at it. And along the public input session line, I would really like us to emphasize public hearing. This is the line criteria: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. No, your districts can't stay the same. Certain basic things that everyone can kind of go, oh, right. Oh, right. There are certain rules that they might come up and say, I want to do this. And say, thank you. You can't, because see, and point back over here. And there was a whole list of these that the 2010 had up there to facilitate, move things along. It's almost like there, I think it was, frequently asked questions or something like that. I don't quite remember what it was. But I think Karin might actually have a copy of that. And that is something that we need to have for the public input session. So I'm just going to say that I cannot overemphasize, let's get into the Koi training and do that. And so our public input session, these trial runs, I think we should take it as more of the public input session. And don't necessarily, we'll have to decide how much Koi training we want to do, but listen, thank you, because Trina's absolutely right. In terms of getting all of a Koi there and all that information, that's going to take a long time.
Okay, thanks, Jane. Alicia?
Yes, I just wanted to also note that if they need an interpreter, they might need extra time as well. Because they're saying their community of interest, and then it has to be translated or interpreted to English. And then the other thing is just so that my fellow commissioners are aware, at the next meeting next week, I'm going to try to solidify some business meeting dates too. So I don't know, Alvaro, if maybe we need to get together to see what your June, July looks like, kind of draft wise, and then you can try to work on trying to intermingle some business meetings as well. Thanks.
So Marion had something, and then I need to go.
Just that Commissioner Fernandez is right. If you're using an interpreter, you should basically double the time that you're allowing somebody.
Okay. So I just kind of want to summarize where we're at, because we're up against a break, if we're going to take a break or if we're going to call for public comment right now. I kind of feel like at this point we've decided on, and I feel like we should bring forward to the commission next week that we're going to propose 2 statewide virtual public input sessions with all the details that we talked about. We'll work the agenda based on the input that we've heard, based on the summary that Patricia had and the subsequent input that we've heard, and draft that up and bring that forward to propose and work with Alvaro to propose a couple of dates for that at the next meeting. The rest of it, the rest of the details of maybe hybrid meetings, we'll work that, and then Koi training and what's happening with the grants committee and how that all works together. We'll work that later. But for the meeting coming up next week, we would propose these 2 statewide public input meetings in mid-June. Is that where we're at? Can I get a thumbs up or a no? Yes, 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 yes. Jane, yes. Okay, Linda, yes. Marcy? Oh, okay. Marcy's yes. Okay. Well,
I have a
then,
question.
yes, Marcy.
I guess I'm just going to nudge a little, and why not look at dates for the whole summer
Okay.
next week? Also, if
Okay.
you're going to look at dates for June.
Okay. All right. I think we're gonna propose dates instead of asking, to go through that process. Patricia?
Also, when we present back to the full commission, I would like to propose that beginning mid-May, I'll give us a month, that our public education, all our comms and outreach is focused on communities of interest, that we really shift it to do that piece more. So less on what is a commission, who are we, and more on that piece.
Okay. Jane?
Just on that very note, Linda and I have been doing the presentation for, out in the rural areas, and we've modified it. And because we've had to have a limited time frame, and then I've done another one, and it's a little bit shorter, and it really does emphasize what are the rules, what's the Koi interest, and it doesn't go into the history, it doesn't go into who we are, it sort of skips a bunch of things, and that was very well received, and I've gotten more comments about, wow, that was what we really needed to hear. So we can certainly share that with the slight modification that we did. And then I haven't even talked to Linda about the latest one I did, but it's sort of using the basics.
Okay. So we're really up against it, Jane. So thank you. I appreciate it. I don't mean to cut you off. So Christian, would it be okay if we went to public comment at this point and then wrapped it up?
Sounds good, Chair.
Okay. Thanks, Katie.
You're welcome. In order to maximize transparency and public participation in our process, the commissioners will be taking public comment by phone. To call in, dial the telephone number provided on the live stream feed. It is 877-853-5247. When prompted, enter the meeting ID number provided on the live stream feed. It is 954-7908-8817. When prompted to enter a participant ID, simply press the pound key. Once you have dialed in, you'll be placed in a queue. To indicate you wish to comment, please press *9. This will raise your hand for the moderator. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a message that says the host would like you to talk and to press *6 to speak. If you would like to give your name, please state and spell it for the record. You are not required to give your name to give public comment. Please make sure to mute your computer or live stream audio to prevent any feedback or distortion during your call. Once you are waiting in the queue, be alert for when it is your turn to speak, and again, please turn down the live stream volume. And this time we do not have any... Oh! Well, I spoke too quickly. See how that goes? For callers that are calling in, if you could press *9 to raise your hand indicating you wish to comment. I'd assume that's why you're calling right now. But and we have one caller with a hand up. And the floor is
thank you.
yours.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Karen Diaz. I'm the electoral field manager for the Coalition for Humane Immigrant Rights. Chirla is a statewide organization with a national impact, and our mission is to achieve a society fully just for immigrants. And the reason why I'm calling, I really appreciate all the conversation that the commission have had on this public design meeting. In regards to the comment by Commissioner Sinai regarding the grant system, I think the community organizations are still hoping that there is a way that the commissioners can grant those funds to the community-based organizations. I think a lot of community organizations still haven't received any funding for the redistricting work that we're doing, and a lot of organizations are still preparing their plans and doing the community education. I know we are amongst those organizations that haven't received any funding for the redistricting, and we will continue doing our part to educate our communities. And throughout the month of May and throughout the entire month of summer, we're going to be working on collecting those Koi testimonies, doing those community educations, and in order for us to have the more robust plan, we would just really appreciate the continued support of the commission and trying to find a way to work to provide those grants to community-based organizations. Last week, as part of a lot of the other organizations, we submitted some suggestions as to which communities are counting on the funding, homeless communities, immigrants communities, English as second language. So we just look forward to seeing what the commission can do to continue to work with the organizations to bring the funds to the community, even if community-based organizations, even if it's late during the summer, to continue to do the work that's going to go on throughout later on in the year when the final maps are adopted. Thank you.
Well, Ms. Diaz, thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate you and your organization's engagement in redistricting and the work that you're doing. And we appreciate it and encourage you to keep it up. And I think I speak for all the commissioners that we all hope we can grant the money. That is I think a unanimous hope from all the commissioners that we can get the money out in the hands of the community groups. So we're doing our best to try to do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was our caller for this evening.
Okay. Well, with that, I want to thank everyone for joining us and the robust conversation that we had and the feedback and input. I think we're at a better place now. If there's nothing else, I will adjourn this meeting. Thank you.